Bienvenidos and welcome back to Puro Pinche Gol, the place we discuss all things USMNT y la selección mexicana. My name is Adrian. Joining me once again is my co-host Tocayo, Adrian. Adrian, what's good with you, man?
Hey, what's up, dude? I know we're about to talk about eltri, and I'm wearing my USMNT shirt. Don't fall for it, PPG Nation. I'm just a fan of the USMNT. I'm not a follower of the USMNT.
That's good. But yeah, we're going to be discussing El Tri's recent roster drop for the Nations League semifinals and potential finals here in March. El Jimmy dropped the roster of the 23 convocados, and
Mhm.
as you expect, Adrian, maybe not a lot of real big surprises. There are a couple notable omissions that we'll discuss, and a couple inclusions that we'd like to kind of pinpoint. But all in all, as we've discussed in the past, Jimmy has his core. He's got his players that he kind of calls on, his favorites per se, and I think it comes down to that's who Mexico has at the moment. So Adrian, why don't you start off on the goalkeepers, then we'll go defense, mid, and then forwards, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. For keepers, I guess if there's any surprises, there's one here. He has Luis Angel Malagón from America, Guillermo Ochoa from Salernitana, and Julio Gonzalez from Pumas. It looks like Julio Gonzalez is now the third in line ahead of Pepe Toño Rodriguez, which is interesting because we say that El Jimmylozano is sticking to his guns and calling up those that he actually know and used to coach whenever he was the under 20 or under 23 coach. But Julio Gonzalez is taking the lead on that specific third string goalkeeper for El Tri.
Yeah, Julio Gonzalez, who we mentioned in our previous video when we discussed Mexico's situation currently with the goalkeeper. Check it out if you haven't. It'll be in our link below.
Mhm.
The Julio Gonzalez, we mentioned that maybe was kind of, definitely ahead of Acevedo. I mentioned he was kind of a little ahead of him. Acevedo, who we know has dropped, and now I guess it's official that he has become the third in line.
Mhm.
I don't think, I know you'll agree, and our listeners will agree, he has a chance of playing, but he's at least third. And one notable item, we're talking about goalkeepers, since we mentioned him in our goalkeeping video, Alex Padilla, the Bilbao goalkeeper, third string goalkeeper there at Bilbao, who is, youngster, he's Spanish/Mexican, has interestingly enough been called up right to the U23 for La Selección Mexicana.
Yes. That's actually good news. I was not expecting that specifically because if you look at that roster, pretty much all of those players come from Liga MX or is heavily based in Liga MX. And the fact that they're calling up a dual nat, it just goes to show that maybe they're paying attention on overseas, and they should do the same thing with other players that are out there, man. You know.
Yeah, no, he's the only European-based player on that roster.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a couple that have come back, Santiago Munoz, Marcelo Flores, but they're all, as we know, here in Liga
Liga
MX now.
MX. Yeah.
But I agree with you, man. On this main roster, I guess the big surprise, if you'd call it a surprise, is Julio Gonzalez from Pumas being the third goalkeeper officially now.
Mhm.
Moving on to defense, who you got?
We have Julián Araujo from Las Palmas, Jorge Sánchez from Porto, Cesar Montes from Almería, Johan Vázquez from Genoa, Israel Reyes from América, no clue why, Jesus Gallardo from Rayados, and Gerardo Arteaga from Rayados as well. And I think he also called up Jesus Orozco Chiquete from Chivas, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Uh-huh. Jesus Orozco Chiquete.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, players that really don't surprise us here, right? I mean, Julian Araujo, who's
Yeah.
having a spectacular season out there in Las Palmas. Jorge Sanchez, who's kind of maybe one that you're kind of scratching your head as to, he doesn't get much playing time. So what can he do at this for a three currently? Cesar Montes, Almeria, Johan Vázquez, who's probably Mexico's best player currently in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Debatable, but he's definitely one of the better ones currently. Israel Reyes, we talked about him when we did our defense, our left back situation for Mexico video, and how he's one that can be utilized in different positions in the back four. So maybe he's
Mm-hmm.
just taking him as a just in case, but definitely not one that will likely see playing time.
Yeah.
And then there's the Rayados duo, Gerardo Arteaga, who just came off scoring a goal recently in, I think, the last match that Rayados had.
Mm-hmm. And very interesting. I was listening to to an interview that El Jimmylozano did to and I think, they ask him I guess, why he's calling up European based players who don't get any time, like Jorge Sanchez or Cesar Montes, who are not necessarily starting 11 material right now at their current clubs. And his response was that he's calling them up because even though they're not getting consistent game time, they are, day in and day out on a team that has better, I guess, training practices and standards, as well as higher competitiveness, environment. I guess a more competitive environment that has yet to be developed in Liga MX or in Mexico. And to him, at least, that says that they have a slight advantage. But this is something that we've seen not only with Jimmy Lozano, we've seen it pretty much with every single coach that Mexico has had for the last few years. Um, and it's one of those situations where we agree that playing in Europe definitely gives you an advantage over Liga MX base players. But when it comes to, are you really getting any game time versus a Liga MX player who's getting they're getting game time every single week? I think it's a good point of discussion. I think I'm very ambivalent, and I think, at least for me, it's a situation of the present, right? If your present right now shows that you have game time rhythm, then I will put you ahead of someone who might be at a better team with better training standards, with a more competitive environment, but
Hmm.
is not necessarily game time fit.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. Not necessarily just with Mexico. We've seen it with other nations, other teams, where uh, players get called up based off where they are and not
Mhm.
necessarily if they're playing. And yeah, you argue that, or Jimmy argues that he's playing at or training at a daily basis at a higher level than he would be at Liga MX, right? Cesar Montes, for example, here, or Jorge Sanchez. But we've seen players come in to matches not, like you say, match fit. Not,
Yes.
you're missing that I guess that edge, right? That
Mhm.
cunning that you only get from playing matches. So yeah, I guess there's a double sided coin there, that you could say that there might be a threshold where maybe if you're not playing matches for Real Madrid or Manchester City or PSG, but you're training with them, that's maybe keeps you match fit versus
Yes.
starting for America. But when you're playing for, or not playing, you're at Porto or Almeria and you're not playing, is that better than somebody who's playing and starting every match for America?
Yeah.
That's I think that's where it gets kind of muddy and kind of
Mhm.
maybe not, depending on the player, right, and the position and the available players that Mexico has in that position. We know that Mexico maybe doesn't have a lot of players in that defensive position that Jorge Sanchez and Cesar Montes occupy. So maybe
Yeah.
that's why
Mhm.
they're getting called up still.
Mhm.
But I agree with you. I think it's better, even if you're playing Liga MX, to have match fit than average teams in Europe and not playing, right? But
Yeah, not again. You're just going back to the main topic of this episode. Not that many surprises here. To me, I'm just I'm not gonna say amazed, but I'm just a little confused as to why he's calling up Israel Reyes when you have El Toro Guzman from Monterrey,
mm,
or even Jesus Angulo, who I think
yeah.
is a better, I guess, multifunctional player than Israel Reyes. And this is not my Tigres bias coming in, but yeah, that's perhaps the only one. Jesus Orozco Chiquete, even though Chivas is kind of on a downward trend, he's been having a decent season with them. So I guess you ought to have a Chivas player.
Yeah, you have to. Um, okay, no, but I agree with you. I mean, pretty straightforward for defense. What about for medio campo?
We have Edsonalvarez from West Ham, Luis Romo from Monterrey, Luis Gerardo Chavez from Zenit, right? Yes. No, sorry, Dinamo Moscow. My bad. Dinamo Moscow. We have Orbelin Pineda from EK Athens, Eric El Chiquito Sanchez from Pachuca, Charlie Rodriguez from Cruzazul, who we haven't seen in a while. It looks like we also have Marcel Ruiz from Toluca, and I think that's it. All of the midfielders. So yeah, I think the biggest surprise here is Charlie Rodriguez. Um, and I say it's a big surprise because we haven't seen him in a while, and I personally was kind of happy to not see him because he's one of those players that we all thought had a super huge ceiling, and he was going to be one of those players that move forward with the generational change.
Yep.
But with on the last few years of Tata Martino, and then the early years, or I guess the only year with Diego Coca, and or I guess last year, he was just underperforming with eltri significantly, and as well with Cruz Azul. It looks like he's getting a second wind with Cruz Azul this season, and I think the fact that we don't have Raul Jimenez open up the door for a call up like this one.
Mm,
Um, I don't think he's gonna start. I don't think he's gonna play. But I think it's just a good backup to the likes of Luis Chavez or Luis Romo.
yeah. And just while we're still here on the topic of medio campo, there was two notable omissions that we kind of talked about before. When the roster dropped earlier today,
Mhm.
Jordi Cortizo from Monterrey and
Yeah.
El Chino Huerta, that are kind of omitted from here. Chino Huerta maybe understandable. He hasn't been as hot as he was last season,
Mhm.
but definitely one that you look at Jimmy and maybe question a couple things, right?
Yeah, and with Gino Huerta, I think mainly the reason was is because Pumas told eltri that he was at like either fatigue or show some signs of muscle fatigueness, and they didn't want to risk him to lose him for the next 5 matches of ligamx, as
Yeah,
ligamx is coming to a mid-season kind of
critical point.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh-huh. And yeah, I mean Jordi Cortizo, he's doing great with Monterrey. I am not sure what's the decision behind not calling him up. I think he's ahead of Charlie Rodriguez, but maybe Jimmy Lozano doesn't see it that way. And I guess the fact that Charlie Rodriguez was also part of Jimmy Lozano's tenure as the under 20 and the Olympic coach for Mexico, it just sets Charlie up for having a quasi sort of given spot if he's performing well.
yeah. Okay, but yeah, other than that, I think I agree with Jimmy. I think these are his best options. Definitely having the duo of
Yeah.
edsonalvarez, Luis Chavez are the pinnacle of the mediocampistas, right? The ones that are going to be moving the ball and generating offense for El Tri. So good to see them. And for delanteros, I know this is one where Jimmy surprised a lot of people with an omission that you already referenced, but. There's also one inclusion here that I was pretty surprised to see. Who do you got for delanteros?
So we have Santigimenez from Feyenoord, El chukylozano from PSV, Henry Martin from America, Julián Quiñones from America, Uriel Antuna from Cruzazul, and El Piojo Alvarado from Chivas. So
El
the biggest
Piojo
omission here is,
over
yeah.
Raúl Jiménez.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that this Raúl Jiménez submission opened up the door for, of course, El Piojo and Charlie Rodriguez. I'm not too sure which one is the actual replacement. I think El Piojo covers for not calling up El Chino Huerta, and then Charlie Rodriguez is the cover up for not calling up Raúl Jiménez. But listen, again, I think this goes to show that Jim Lozano is basing his decisions on the just essentially sticking to his guns, not taking any risks. This doesn't mean that El Piojo Alvarado is not having a good season with Chivas. I think he's the best one so far, even though they have lost 4 matches in a row. Uh, and if you look at the roster, or the 60-man roster, what other options you have? Well, you have Santiago sorry, not Cordova. You had Diego Lainez. You had, even if you want to call Marcelo Flores, which I don't think he's ready for this kind of
Yeah.
responsibility. But there were just a few other names that you could have chosen ahead of El Piojo Alvarado. I don't have anything against him. It's just that for me, he's one of those players that shouldn't be part of Mexico's A team if there's one.
Do you think we'll see him, or do you think we'll see our fan favorite Uriel Antuna as a starter?
No, I think Oriol Antuna is gonna start ahead of him. I think it's pretty clear that either Jimmy Lozano is gonna play with Santigimenez at the helm, and then Chukylozano on one of the wings. And I would like to see if he goes with Julián Quiñones or Oriol Antuna. because I think he's gonna stick with a 4-3-3. To be honest with you, um, so I think his biggest question would be whether he wants to play Julian Quiñones or Uriel Antuna.
Yeah, I guess that's the big question. Other than that, we saw him. He sticks with his incondicionales. He sticks with
Mm-hmm.
players that make him feel comfortable, Jimmy. So really nothing too out there, right, for this
Mm-hmm.
roster.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I mean, they got Panama and as their first match of this Nations League, and we were just kind of talking if he doesn't beat Panama, where Jimmy's probably out.
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. I know there's some big spheres in the Mexican football uh, environment, or I guess Doña Fede sus secuaces that really don't like El Jimmylozano, and they're just waiting for him to have a big failure to kick him out. I personally think that if he gets humiliated by Panama in Nations League, he's probably gonna get the boot. If he moves on to the final and loses against the USMNT, he probably will get a pass until they can evaluate the results of Copa America. But if he doesn't win Nations League, whether he loses against the USMNT or Canada, um,
Panama.
pressure's gonna be on.
Oh, or Canada, the final, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I get what you're
yeah.
saying.
Assuming
Okay,
they move on to the final,
they move
right?
on. Right, right.
Uh,
Okay.
I think just the pressure is gonna build up. It's gonna heat up, and it's gonna be a very unbearable situation for him. I think.
Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't get to that, and hopefully
Hmm.
we get a good USMNT Mexico final again. But yeah, has been Jimmy's roster for the 23 convocados for the Nations League. Semifinals and potential final for later this March. Keep it here with PPG. We'll be covering that Nations League definitely in detail as we get closer. At the end, man, as we wrap up this episode, bro, where can listeners find us?
Hey man, they can always find us on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on the notifications. You can also find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast on. Last but not least, you can also find us on Instagram. We post stuff every now and then.
Yeah, so be sure to follow us on your preferred social media platform and let us know in the comments. Were there any omissions or inclusions that surprised you from Jimmy's roster here for Nations League? Who would you have brought instead of maybe Pio Alvarado or somebody on the list that you are questioning? Definitely let us know. And let us know if you're excited for Alex Padilla being called up for the U23. I don't think he'll be the starter there, but it's definitely good to see eltri kind of reaching out to other dual nats, like Adrian said earlier in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely let us know in the comments. We like interacting with you guys there. Adrian, man, good episode, brother. See you in the next one, man.
Take it easy, my friend.
See ya.
Deuce.